by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy. Let's win there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so that's not so bad.
Exactly.
So I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. George, are you there?
Yeah, Peter, how are you?
How am
I'm well, here's what happened. I'm standing outside of the Chinese company called Commercial Aircraft of China.
Yeah.
And, you know, they exfiltrate all the secrets, you know, commercial aircraft, military aircraft.
Is that a Nicholas Berggren company?
Well, he's now talking about DeepSeek and how proud he is of DeepSeek. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't. Maybe we should start by what Peter and Jessica have been doing.
Let's do that. I'm just letting you know where I am. I'm on Von Karman Drive, which of course he's the guy who exfiltrated all the Nazi secrets, right?
Is that 70,000 feet up in the air? Is that the Von Karman line?
No, it's 327,360, which is the same number, which happened to be on those Biden Blackberries. Isn't that interesting? But let's talk about you guys.
Anyway, well, good news is that we took a giant step forward today, and that is that we found an Airbnb that we are going to grab for a month, because what we've been doing is we've been jumping from hotel to Airbnb to hotel to Airbnb, and it's really, really hard to get your life together when every 3 days or week or so you got to figure out where you're going to move. And you know, what was the word you used? Hurdling. Mm-hmm. We've been hurdling. We hurdled out of our apartment and put everything that we could put into a vehicle into the vehicle, and then we drove around with it like homeless people, because we're homeless people. And you know, I think we'd feel worse about it, except that there's, I don't know, 100,000 of us in Los Angeles. And so you know, we've been looking at boats. We've been talking about what it would be like to live on a boat. Unfortunately, living on a boat isn't something that you just go do. You know, there are these things called live aboard rules, where you can only stay in a place where they allow you to live aboard. And, you know, kind of the idea of living on a boat was, oh, well, you know, Berggren and company are bringing this smart city, California, you know, philosopher king republic to fruition right under our feet. And they're using the Phoenix program. You know, George, you and I have been talking about the Phoenix program for 7 years. It didn't occur to me until January 7th that meant burning my house down. You know what I mean? So
and also to that point, Berggren Institute admitted today very quietly that they've been involved in a fire wildlife management scheme since the spring of 2024, right, with CAL FIRE. Oh, thank you very much. Isn't that what we were saying? Isn't that what you were saying when we were doing the charrettes in Los Angeles?
And I can't remember the guy's name off of the top of my head, because remembering my own name from minute to minute has become an issue in the last couple of weeks. But when Berggruen was fighting to get his Berggruen Institute installed up by the Getty, they did also hire an ex-Los Angeles Fire Department fire chief. And I haven't done a deep dive on that guy yet, but maybe some people who are listening want to go do deep dives on that guy. I could tell you that yesterday, the book that and I'm going to try to show some video. I don't know if I have enough bandwidth, because you and I are both working on hotel Wi-Fi at this point. But one of the books that I lost in the fire is a book that was a limited edition book that was called The Street Names of the Pacific Palisades. And I was very pleased yesterday, because I went to the Santa Monica Public Library to find out that the archives of the Pacific Palisades Historical Society are being stored at the Santa Monica Library. So I was pretty happy about that, because this book that I was looking for is called The Street Names of the Pacific Palisades, because one of the leads that I'm following right now, and I don't know that this is true, okay, but there's a whole religious story about the founding of the Pacific Palisades. They were founded by Methodists, and the way that I originally heard the story is that the Catholics came in and bought up Westwood, and then the Methodists came in and they bought up the Pacific Palisades. I don't know enough about the nuance of any of these stories to be able to actually accurately report on it, which is why I'm researching it right now. But there was after World War I, when the Methodists came in, and that's what the picture is on the thumbnail today and I probably could bring it up. There was they basically surveyed the Pacific Palisades, and the Methodists bought up all of the lots in the Palisades, but there was a plan to put up this thing called a Temple of Peace. Now, in my research that I've been doing the last couple of months, what I've figured out is that I don't think the Statue of Liberty is the Statue of Liberty. I don't think there is a Roman god called Liberty. I think that there's a cult of Attis, and Attis is a castrated shepherd who is kind of androgynous and has these 7 rays coming out of his head. So I don't really believe that the Statue of Liberty is a Statue of Liberty. I believe it's a statue of Attis. So when in the 1920s, they announced that they want to build this Temple of Peace in the Pacific Palisades, I started to scratch my head and wonder whether or not that's a Temple of Peace or a temple of something else. And I may have a little video that I can run if I've got enough bandwidth. So I'm going to try. This is from
Can I just
go
throw
ahead.
in really quick? I did a Substack on this, and it was called the Chautauqua Movement from Lake Chautauqua
Yep.
in New York. And what they were is a bunch of Sunday school teachers. And at that time in the late 1800s, there was no higher education like we know it today with universities. And really, Sunday school teachers were the first high school. And the Chautauqua movement, they would go to the sea for vacation, but then they just decided to stay after World War I, right? And a lot of the Chautauquans, Huell Hauser did a thing on it a couple of years ago, maybe 20 years ago. So anyway, go ahead with the film.
Yeah, I'm going to see if this runs. Now, I'm depending. I could start with a picture. Hang on a second. First I'll start with a picture, because I know we have enough bandwidth for a picture. Okay, let me see. Share screen. Oh my God. I had to get a new computer too, and so my settings are all messed up. Open system settings. Let's turn it on. Use my password. Allow. It's telling me that I've got to quit and reopen. Okay, George, stay there. Everybody hang in there with me. I got to restart Brave. I can't believe this. Hang on. This is not great. Here we go.
Well, I guess I am still being heard because I can still see my glyph there. I'm just walking around the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China. People say, well, where do you go to see where people exfiltrate technology? Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so I was going to start with, I believe it's Peach Hill, it's called. Oh, Peach Hill. So if you can see this, I think that this was called Founders Day. And the street that runs down the middle of this picture was Via de la Paz, which is the only street in the Pacific Palisades besides the street that the people are standing on, which I think, well, the street that crosses is called Beverly in the picture, but it was eventually renamed Sunset Boulevard. Okay. And where all of the people are standing became a street that was known as Monument in the Palisades. There was no monument there, but there was a plan to build a monument. And if you look all the way down at the end of Via de la Paz, my apartment building was all the way at the end and just immediately to the left of the end of Via de la Paz. That's where I lived. And this is pretty much what this
I can't
neighborhood
see
looks
this.
like.
I can't see the picture.
You can't see the picture. Okay,
I
thank
cannot.
you for interrupting me and telling me, because I need to share it. There
Correct.
it is.
Suck.
All right.
Oh, that's
Thank
cool.
Okay. So if you look, okay, so the street running down the middle is you, George. You and I have walked down this street 1,000 times. This is
Correct.
Via de la Paz. Okay. I lived at the end of Via de la Paz, just to the left of the inn there, and my apartment building was built shortly after this picture was taken. I think this picture was taken in 1920, and my apartment building was built in 1924. Okay. And you can see that there's 1 or 2 or 3 houses there. That's about how many houses are left in the neighborhood now. This is exactly what the Pacific Palisades looks like right now. Okay. But the reason that this was called Via de la Paz was because it's the road of peace. All of the other roads, street names in the Pacific Palisades are named after Methodist teaching colleges. So Friends.
And there were women's Methodist. Yeah.
Yeah, Friends and Mount Holyoke and Swarthmore. Those were all teaching colleges names. And so I have but they wanted to build, not only did they want to build houses here, but some people wanted to build this big thing that looks like a Roman temple. So if I've got enough bandwidth, I'm going to see if I can share that. So let me see if I can take this away and then present something else. And if not, I'll download it and we'll do another show and I'll show it again. Hang on a second. Okay. Stop sharing, share screen. And then I want to go to, let me see. It's called Religion in the Palisades.
And share it.
Okay, I'm going to show it. Hang on.
And this was considered this amazing wonderland of mountains and ocean and boundless fishing, and where you would go on these lumber schooners, where that would bring lumber down from Northern California. And another group started to come in about 1921 that was wanting to build their dream.
Okay, so this is another group, okay? So this is the Methodists versus somebody else, right? And this plan to me looks a lot more like a Nicholas Berggruen Venetian plan than a Methodist teacher college plan, if you get my drift.
I see.
Place. And it was the Methodists. They were wanting to build, the Methodists had built in all across the country, Chautauqua centers, education, entertainment. It was considered a very important, very American kind of process of education. People wanted to hear opera singers. They wanted to, hear lectures. And so they dreamed of having.
Does this look American to you? This does not look American to me. This looks like Greek or Roman or Egyptian, but there's a giant statue there.
One in Pacific Palisades on the West Coast. They purchased the land, and what they did is they laid it out. They got an architect to do the layout. This road right here is Via de la Paz. And if you notice, it goes up to a giant, very fancy temple type thing. It was a monument to peace. The reason why is because everybody had just gone through World War I. They were tired of war. They wanted to have something looking toward the future. These plans were put together by several architects, one of them being the Olmsted brothers, who laid out Central Park. They wanted to have, if you notice, except for one structure here, which would be in their landslide zone, run. If you notice, the commercial district is inland. They did that on purpose. They wanted this to be about life, about being not making money. They felt it was important to have the community kind of interact with the ocean and in a way that wasn't carnival-like. They'd seen how Venice and things like that had been so commercialized that they didn't want that. So this is why you have a lot of residential kind of worked right up to the edge, and a lot of parks along the edge of the canyons. And so this was their dream.
So my guess is that is still their dream. It's a finger in the air. So there's a book called The Street Names of the Pacific Palisades that I used to own that burned, and there's a copy of it in the Santa Monica Library. And I'm going to go, I have a meeting with the reference librarian. The book went from $20 on Amazon to $3,000 on Amazon in a couple of days. So I'm going to go see if I can use V-Flat on my iPhone and make a copy of it, because I want to also get the bibliography for that book, because I want to know more about this temple, that they wanted to build, because that doesn't, there's something very reminiscent of the Statue of Liberty and the hermaphrodite Columbia on the pediment of the Mellon Auditorium in Washington, D.C., and the lictor holding a fasci on the pediment of the Supreme Court. All of this stuff does not look, this guy is saying this is very American looking. Like, George, do you really think that looks American?
I would give it neoclassical, but that's just me, because Miami was kind of a neoclassical. So, but there you have it.
Anyway, so that's what I've been working on, and I haven't been able to work on much because usually I'm unpacking or packing and then trying to figure out what the next place I'm going to live is. So I'm hoping to get some sense of order back in the month of February, and I'm going to do that farther south. I'm going to do that down in San Diego. So I have a place for a month in San Diego where I don't have to move for a month. I can sit down and I can work. And besides writing stories and doing research and finishing my book, because I got to finish my book now, because my book is more important now than it ever was, because I really do believe that the use of words. So, for example, all of these fires are being sold as wildfires. That's epistemological warfare. Epistemological means how you know something. or how something started. Okay. I had a meeting yesterday with 5 guys. I was the only renter. The other 4 guys were homeowners who all had their houses burned to the ground. One of the guys was a developer. He in the neighborhood. He had 5 houses burned to the ground, and it was a weird spectrum. It was a weird spectrum of opinions because there was one guy who I sat across from, who I liked very much, and he was very open. He was very open to understanding that this was a deliberate act, that our neighborhood was burned down with malice aforethought. And he was open to it. And I was trying to explain to these guys that they want us all confused with our own selfishness in order to be able to make sure that we can, get our insurance money and start rebuilding as fast as possible. And the problem with that is that the more energy and time that you put into that, the less energy and time that you're putting into pressuring people to be accountable to find out who actually did it. Who are the perps? And I think that, to steal something from the communists, I think that an investigation needs to start with a top-down, bottom-up, inside-out. So if I were talking to Kash Patel or somebody at the FBI, I would be saying, start with Nicholas Berggruen, Steve Soberoff, and Edmonston, and Jerry Brown, and Gavin Newsom, and the Pelosi's, and find out who they are in bed with business-wise. Find out who they're buying stock in. Where are they investing? The bottom up, I would be going to the cartels. I would be, there's George. Here we go. Are you back, George?
I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, I did. I went into the app, so that I apologize for it dropping, but yeah.
It's okay. What I was explaining is that I had a meeting yesterday with 5 homeowners, actually 6. And there was a whole spectrum of interest in who done it. That is, most of them were, I would qualify them as selfishly invested in trying to rebuild back as fast as possible. And one of my friends, and he's a good friend of mine, I like him, he said, you know what, even if I knew who did it, what difference would it make? Like, are they going to go catch him and throw him in jail and make him pay me back? Like, he was kind of pragmatic to the point that I wanted to vomit, That said, there was a guy who was sitting directly across from me who was listening and understanding, and he wanted to go listen to Palmerston Zoo, and he wanted to go figure out who Nicholas Berggruen is and what the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy may have to do with all of this. And Steve Soberoff, who apparently I never heard of the guy before because I never paid too much attention to LA politics, but apparently he was a board member of the police commission and single-handedly represented the Black Lives Matter and all of that other stuff during all of the George Floyd riots, and completely, neutered the Los Angeles Police Department during the time that he was there. So, when people who are directly associated with Nicholas Berggruen are getting assigned tasks to rebuild the Palisades, and I'm looking at these 100-year-old plans to build a temple of peace, and the picture of the Palisades today very much looks like the picture of the Palisades taken in 1920. I'm thinking maybe it took them 100 years to try to figure out how to build their temple of peace, but that's what they're doing. That's my guess. I don't know.
Well, the Berggruen Institute has a 470-acre plot in the Santa Monica Mountains that they weren't able to build on. They were wanting to build it in Brentwood, but they much rather would build it, I think, in Palisades, because Palisades is oceanfront. Where they were talking about in the mountains, there was objections because of water, fire, all these things, wildlife. But Palisades would be perfect, wouldn't it? So I think if you,
It's prettier. It's prettier than the Sierra Tower, where old Nick dresses up like Jake Giddies from
Chinatown.
from Chinatown, and he grows his in vitro kids there.
Well, yeah. Well, there is some kind of odd ties that he has back to the Ryman family in Germany that Frau Hodel has brought forth. But yeah, I definitely think
Our friend Chuck seems to think that he's deeply. I don't know. I haven't been able to follow up on this, but our friend Chuck seems to think that he's deeply involved in the Bass family in Utah. Now, I don't know. I haven't followed that up. That's pure speculation, but I'm just telling you what somebody else told me. So
well, Peter,
I don't know that to be true.
You were at our Torrey Pines charrette by the Supercomputer Center in San Diego. You were. I don't know if you came down.
I'm gonna be close there starting tomorrow night.
All right, I'll be over for free lodging. No, I'm kidding.
I think we have 2 bedrooms.
Oh, you better check it out with Lady Jessica first.
No, she already said you're welcome.
Oh, well, okay. On a related note,
we can pick you up on the way.
Oh, okay. Okay, that sounds good. On a related note, Peter, and I think that's going to be the best place to finding a boat, to be honest with you, and slips that are available, because LA is just so many refugees right now. It's just impossible, as you know, and you've been frustrated.
Here's what I think I figured out. The slips are cheaper up here, but there aren't any boats. The boats are cheaper down south because the slips are so expensive. People just want to get out of the boats.
Right.
So I think the idea is to find a cheap boat in San Diego and then sail it up to a cheap slip in Ventura. That's my thought.
Yeah. Well, okay. For previous issue of Nick Bergruen, with his contacts with China, the Bergruen Institute in China, this is an exfiltration of technology. It's not just. I was just at the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, just over the street on Von Karman. The medical vaccines, the cancer vaccines. We talked about the University of California system being used in order to do cancer vaccines. We talked about Bob Malone in Sacramento, UC Davis. Dr. Hamamoto talked about that. We talked about University of San Diego with the supercomputers. There's cancer vaccine trials going on here in Irvine. Right. So this whole thing is DeepSeek Labs that Nicholas Berggren is complimenting today. Was doing a fire exercise at the same time the Berggren Institute was doing that. So this is the exfiltration of all this technology to China. You see Elaine Chao's name right up there. That's Mark Zuckerberg's wife. He's currently investing in New York with a bio-hub. He's investing in Chicago with a bio-hub. He's investing here with a bio-hub. So all of this is part of a bigger thing in my estimation. It's not just using fire as a way of ethnically cleansing and getting rid of the Methodists. It's a wholesale transfer of information to China. And that's why we need to get to the bottom of the Berggren Institute. They can't hide behind the NGO cloak anymore. And that's why the guy is wrong, that not looking into this, what good will it do? Because if it shows that malice was used, then they can get treble damages and they can get us to rebuild those houses. And Trump, I won't mention, there was a president that said it should be 10% bigger footprint for the houses and 10% taller. I don't know which president it is, but it's whoever's president right now. I can't say his name.
Anyway, yeah, well, what's his name? Joe Fuckhead Lonsdale tweeted out that the city was going to require that there was low income housing, and that means that the Palisades is going to be populated with crack dealers. Well, Joe Lonsdale, fuck yourself, okay? Fuck yourself, because I'm not a crack dealer. I'm a publisher, I'm a writer, and I live in the Pacific Palisades for 30 years. I lived in a beautiful apartment, and you could just go fuck yourself. That's my message to Joe Lonsdale. That said, my wife is probably embarrassed.
Wasn't there a Lonsdale that did a lot of false flags in Vietnam, I think? And he was
this guy is like, I think he's in the PayPal mafia. He's like a Teal Musk, dude, he's a fuckhead. You can go fuck yourself. Anyway, the point is that I just talked to my buddy. I have a buddy who lives in an apartment building, and the apartment building did not burn. And the reason the apartment building didn't burn is because there was this crazy guy who lived in the back unit who put buckets and filled buckets with water on the roof before they turned the water off. And when the fire came, he put out all the embers on the roof and he saved the whole apartment building. So the apartment building did not burn down. It's got some smoke damage, but it's fine.
That's right on Sunset there, and
right
on the corner of Sunset and Swarthmore, or
Villa
de la Paz.
I showed it in a video on an earlier thing.
I interviewed a fireman. I interviewed a fireman here yesterday, and he told me again, he worked the LA fires. He was down here to get away from it all, the smoke. He said that there was a cordon and they were not allowed to go in. They had no water and there was no reason to go in. Everyone who's on the ground says there was no water and that's why they didn't go in and fight the fire. They were cordoned off in Santa Monica. That's the story of the fire. It was a controlled burn.
Yeah, it's a controlled. Yeah, and that's just a lie. And Karen Bass will get a slap on the wrist, and then everybody will get a check for $1.98 in the month. 5 years from now, that will be paid for by the other taxpayers. The other thing is that the Pacific Palisades, I'm just going to guess here, they probably represent between 15 and 20% of the property taxes that are collected in Los Angeles. Okay. That tax base is erased for the moment. Like, I don't think those people are paying property taxes. They still have to pay their mortgages, though. All those people still have to pay their mortgages. So, there's.
But what if they did high rise and it wasn't low income, and they did like Vancouver and put in 50 stories, like at the end of Ocean Boulevard in Santa Monica, right? And then they sold them to Chinese for $1 million a piece for the Olympics. Would they have a tax base then? Yes. They'd have much more than your tax base of your 8 unit, right? And that's the plan. Right. Up towards Sunset is where they want to put the high res, and then they want to put the Berggruen Institute down there where you were, right, on the water.
Yeah, it's funny because where you're saying the Berggruen is they want to put the Berggruen Institute on the water, which I think you're probably right. Okay, I think that makes sense to me. At one point, about 4 years ago, a bunch of kids. It was the greatest thing that I ever saw. One of the things that my wife loved about my neighborhood when I first drove her up there the first time, she looked at me and she said, "There's kids on bikes. There's kids riding their bikes down the street. It's like a movie, And these same kids, they got some shovels, and they got some pieces of plywood, and they went down on the bluffs in front of my house, and they built ramps and whoop-de-doos, and they built themselves. They spent it was about 5 or 6 kids with shovels, and they spent about a weekend, and they built their own BMX park. And I thought that was like the coolest thing ever, right? And as a joke, right, I know that you can create a business in Google really easily. And I created a fake business called the Palisades Bluffs BMX Park. And I created a business page with a pin on it with photographs. So if you were Googling using Google Maps, it would show you that there was a BMX park at the end of my street, right? Well, Joe Edmonston personally came down there with a bunch of his, I think they're all, Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy has a whole army of people who don't speak English, okay? Who do all of their, pruning and brush clearing and stuff like that. And he brought all of those guys down there with his, with his ranger uniform and his hat and his gun, and he made sure that those braceros went and wiped out that BMX park. There was no BMX park there left when Joe Edmonston was done, because that was Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy, and there would be no children having fun on BMX bicycles on California, on Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy property. That was just never going to happen.
Yeah, and that's exactly who Santa Monica Conservancy is exactly who kind of said we don't want the Berggruen Institute in Brentwood because of all the water and the fire and the wildlife and so forth. And then this happens after they do a fire exercise. Haven't we heard this before where they do a live fire exercise and then there's a fire? You know, there's a controlled burn. I think some of the other big fires, the Paradise Fire and the camp, I can't remember the camp name, but the campfire also were controlled burns. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And at this point, it's a pattern, right? Like, you know, it happens once, it's an accident. It happens twice, it's curious. It happens 3 times. It's this is a program. Okay. So somebody named Max Meeks asked a question. Who would want to be a refugee in LA? Why not leave the state? Max, have you ever lived here? Like, I'm in Ventura right now. My wife and I are walking around. I lived in Santa Barbara for 2 years because I went to UC Santa Barbara for a couple of years, computer science major. The weather sucks. If you get between Los Angeles and San Diego is the most beautiful place on the planet to live. It just is. Okay. And I grew up here. I live here, and I'm going to fight for this place. Okay. I'll be damned if this Swiss motherfucker comes in here and thinks that he's going to take my state. All these fucking guys with German names, Eric Schmidt, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. Where did your money come from? Where did your money come from? Okay, this is my state. They built a bunker for Adolf Hitler in the Pacific Palisades, a mile from Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks' houses. I'll die fighting for it. Fuck you guys. I'm not leaving.
And I think if you look in the Berggruen, Swiss is an awfully bended word. That's giving him the benefit of the doubt because he goes straight back to the. And you know, it's interesting. The cancer vaccines. I hate to say this, but a lot
is Greenberg. You know.
Correct.
Okay.
And there is connection to the Riemanns with IG Farben. Frau Hodel has that story. And there is connection to this, which is sword and shield, right? Now, I love the people who are working on mRNA and trying to move the technology forward, but I wish it was done on lab animals instead of humans, right? And they can work all that out on lab animals, but I see a ethnic cleansing, right? I see this as a way of letting you live, right? Once you get cancer now you can live if we give you the mRNA. I'm not saying these people aren't working.
Who's the Y Combinator guy who was Operation Stargate?
Sam Altman. Sam Altman.
Yeah, he's saying that we can cure cancer in 40 minutes now with AI. You know, it's like, you know, Eric Schmidt is saying we can reproduce TikTok. We can write programs that reproduce TikTok in a half an hour. It's like these guys are blowing smoke up everybody's asses. This is all mechanical Turk bullshit.
Well, you use AI all the time. I use it all the time. I know what it can do and can't do, right?
Yeah.
And curing cancer is not one of them. Curing cancer, unfortunately, cancer has all sorts of ways and biofeedbacks to work around whatever you think you're stopping in their pathways. And that's just a terrible disease. And I've spent a lot of my time researching it. And I do think cancer vaccines, I don't like I said at the beginning of this, the whole COVID was just to get mRNA. And they didn't want to say we're getting mRNA for cancer vaccines. Right? They wanted to say it's for something else. Oh, now we have it. Now let's launch cancer vaccines. All of the white papers, Shuang Wu, Jordan Walker, Dolston with the 2 cancer moonshots, all were going to be cancer, mRNA cancer. In that same Stargate announcement, if you remember.
I don't remember because I've been driving and packing.
Larry Ellison.
And packing and driving. And
where did Larry Ellison go after Sam Altman said AI was so great? Cancer vaccines. That's the first thing he started talking about. So this is something that they've been, and UC San Diego is the place where they really have worked on it. So And I just want to say one thing about the comment about the bicycles. Every time I came over to your guys' place, Lady Jessica was knitting booties or something for a grandchild to be. And, you know, I think the part of this people don't realize is that all those labors of love and hours that go into that, all that's wiped out as well. It's not just the things that could be replaced like the computers. It's also the things that are mementos that she's doing for her child. And I'm just trying to say that there's a human cost here that is beyond the computers and beyond the replacement of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's there was, yes, and you know, again, I was talking to Jessica about this yesterday. You know, I used to be very proud of what I did as a photographer, right? And I was heavily involved in the manipulation of human beings in order to get them to buy shit that I don't know if it was good for them to buy it or not. Okay, but I was really good at it. You know, I was good at getting people to buy clothes at the May Company and Bullock's and Broadway and Robinson's and Macy's and Marshall Fields and Neiman Marcus and all this other stuff. And they may have gotten a great bit of joy out of buying that stuff, but at the end of the day, it was just stuff, right? And I was working with a bunch of beautiful people, and they all knew a bunch of celebrities, and I got a bunch of, I don't know, adulation or ego boost out of that or stuff, but like all of that burned. And you know what? At this point, I'm not sure that I care, okay? Because I'm so much more interested in having people know how words and pictures are used to manipulate people and to control their behavior and the way that they think. And then I am about trying to take the next good picture. You know, one of our good friends who's still in the politics business wanted to know if I still had all my camera equipment because he wants to hire me to go shoot pictures for some political campaign, which I may do. Okay, but I'm not that motivated by it anymore. You know, I don't really care. I want people to be able to start implementing their logos. I want people to start using asking the questions that George Webb taught me to ask people every day, which is, why is this happening? Who did that? When did that start? Where was it? What is their motivation? You know, we need to be asking these questions, because if we don't ask these questions, then we just have some dumb idiot like Jim Acosta telling us what to think, you know, and we're either on Team Acosta or Team Patrick Byrne or Tucker Carlson. This guy who I bonded with yesterday, you know, he sent me this link to I guess Patrick Byrne did a video, a 14-minute video about how the United States was destroyed from 2020 to 2024 using the 4 methods described by Yuri Bezmenov. And I said to him, I said, everything that Patrick Byrne said in that video is correct, except that they did it 100 years ago. Okay, so by him telling you that the Soviets did it, instead of pointing to the British, who are actually the Venetians, okay, then you're not actually going to ever solve the problem, because if you're blaming it on Joseph Stalin, who's dead, instead of Tony Blair, who's not, then you're pointing to the wrong people, okay? There are people alive today who are still running these programs that Bezmenov was talking about 30 years ago, that the Soviets were running 50 years ago, that were written by the British 100 years ago. End of lecture.
Yeah, I think I've seen that Bezmenov film. And yeah, I agree that all of the bioweapons from the old Soviet Union were turned down, de-amplified, if you will, and then became bioagents. And then places released them in a live exercise so they could sell cancer vaccines. Yes, I believe that. But I met Patrick a couple times and did a couple shows with him, and he always forgets he grew up with Warren Buffett. You know, he always forgets he was the personal assistant to Warren Buffett. He just kind of jumps right by that. So, you
Right,
know,
he claims that he lost $65 million and blah 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 blah. But he's still, and he doesn't have a jet and blah 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 blah. It's like these guys are all cutouts. They're all, I call them fake Horatio Alger stories. Boy,
well, he's
genius.
worth 330 million. So losing 65, I mean, first you got to have 65 to lose it, but he's worth 330 when I talked to him.
Oh, so the poor guy's only worth 270 now? Okay.
So we're going to have.
So he has a G5 and not a G6. Is that what happens?
Yeah, and I think he was also involved with the Russian spies, Butina, right? He's passing in for
Rockefellers.
and now the papers are out. 28 people that Brennan used, 28 different people. It started as the CIA. Crossfire Hurricane started as CIA out first. 28 different people with surveillance CIA, and then it was thrown over the wall when it was about ready to have the election in July to Peter Strzok, and he picked up Crossfire Hurricane. But that started way before with Nellie Orr and Bruce Orr and all them, way before as a CIA program. Now that information's coming out. Mike Morrell, the Mr. 9/11, John Brennan, Mr. 9/11, they're here again with the dirty tricks.
Right. Somebody just said, there's nothing new. I love that people are learning history. Yes. And I'm going to announce this again. And I'm pimping this like a street hustler, but Palmerston Zoo is free on the Duke Report. Okay. You got no excuse now. It's 9 episodes. The first one's 5 minutes. Tell me you don't have 5 minutes. Okay. To listen to the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes is basically, what's her name? From LaRue. Nancy Spanis giving the historical precedent for something that George Webb said to me 7 or 8 years ago, which is, it's all in the metadata. Okay. Nancy Spanis, she talks about Parmenides. She says, you have to look at what is. Just look at what is. Okay. Forget the stories. Just look at what is. Because if you just look at what is, there's all kinds of stories that you can make up that are not the stories that the people with the good looking haircuts and the ties are telling you. Okay. Think for yourself. Apply your logos. Ask why you think this is happening, how it's happening. Do some history, some real history. Find out who Lord Palmerston was. Find out who Giuseppe Manzini is. David Urquhart. A lot of people don't know that Karl Marx lived in London when he published the Communist Manifesto. It's like, it's all this British nonsense. Anyway, Das Kapital. I digress.
Well, yeah, Palmerston was sort of a handmaiden to the Rothschild interests, was he not? When he was prime minister for twice? I don't know, remember the history. But yeah, to follow Palmerston.
I don't know if it's. I think it. Look, I really think the oligarchy works in round tables. Okay, and I don't believe that the Rothschilds are at the top of the pyramid. Okay, and Paul is his name. Paul Winter Oak. Winter Oak may argue with me. Okay, I like him. Okay, but I think the Rothschilds are the bankers to the oligarchy. And I think they are the face men to the oligarchy. And I think that the oligarchy works exactly the way that it worked in Venice, which is that they get together and they decide who the Doge is going to be. Elon Musk is starting to act like a real Doge now, George. He edged out Ramaswamy. Okay. And he's now got access to all government systems that are not classified. To look for redundancies in the systems. He's going to use AI to replace a bunch of stuff. I still think the AI stuff is mechanical Turk nonsense. But, somebody said, TS says they're round tables. They're round tables. The Rockefellers are part of a round table. That's what the Bilderberg Group is. That's what the Council on Foreign Relations is. That's what the Club of Rome is. They are round tables, okay? They are groups of people. They come together. They have a pecking order. You know, there isn't one person in charge, you know? And as Webster Tarpley points out in his Against Oligarchy book, I think, you know, the fondi are, for all intents and purposes, immortal gods. They are big, giant funds of money that are purpose driven, that outlive the lifespans of their boards of directors. They continually go in the same direction. And if we're not looking at the fondi, if we're not looking at the people who the politicians work for, because the politicians are all there to be the scapegoats. Gavin Newsom's job is to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune so that the people that he works for don't have to. That's the quid pro quo. That's why Nancy Pelosi has 2 freezers full of ice cream. Okay? Because her job is to take the blows.
Interesting. I didn't know that assuaged the slings and arrows of Washington, but now I do. I just wanted to call everybody's attention that I am on the Von Karman Boulevard here. Remember, Von Karman is the person who's the Rasputin who controls the mind of Hap Arnold, right? Who does all the advanced aviation for the U.S. Air Force. And what do we have right around the corner? The Chinese company, the Commercial Corporation of China. So just throw that in there. If this isn't the place where the data is being exfiltrated, if this isn't the place where the exfiltration to China is happening, then nowhere is. But I do agree with the roundtable. We were in South Africa. We went to Cape Town, and we went to the roundtable there that Rhodes had. I think that's in your first book, which Palmerston's 9 episodes. I think that's in your first book.
Well, Palmerston's is a podcast, so it's not a.
But I mean, there was I can't remember the guy's name.
Tragedy and Hope, Carol Quigley.
Yeah, but the first guy who ran the roundtable wasn't Rhodes, but he worked for Rhodes.
No, Milner.
Milner.
Yeah, Milner. And John's and Stead, William Stead, who died on the Titanic.
And you know what you used to say about Wonton Tat with the Scrape the Scraper?
Yeah.
The guy who did Clearview, which he didn't steal anything from anybody who owned the rights to their likeness, because somebody else had scraped in Malaysia, had scraped the faces. And he was just...
Or Belarus or someplace,
Yeah, he just scraped the scraper. And the same thing is happening in AI. I think the people who are going to win, like you said, is going to be Palantir. Palantir is going to get it from DeepSeek. DeepSeek, once it goes to China, right? Once it goes to China, now I can license it back. Amazon has already licensed that technology. It's available on Amazon Workspace AWS. And I think this is the future here, is if I stole all the AI to begin with, I don't want to keep that company OpenAI. If I violated all these copyrights, I want to scrape. And now I want to scrape the scraper so I don't have any copyright infringement.
Right, exactly. Weaponized News says, sending loves from Clovis, California. I love Clovis, California, by the way. I pretty much hate everything around Clovis, though. But George, have you ever been to Clovis? It's like if they took a square mile out of Irvine and then dropped it next to Fresno. Like you can't even believe it. It's because you go from Fresno to Clovis, and it's like, am I in Orange County? Like, what the hell happened here? It's a beautiful place. Anyway, there was one other comment, and then I guess we can go because you and I are both. I'm beat. Somebody says, I think you should. Linguistics 101. Do not ever start a sentence to Peter Duke with, I think you should. Okay? Should is a judgmental word. It means that you think that you're smarter than whatever it is that the person that you're talking to is saying. Okay, it's not nice. A different way of saying it is you might want to consider. Okay, I like Mark Grubert. I listened to Mark Grubert. Mark Grubert blocked me once on my other account. I don't know why. I don't give a shit. I think Mark Grubert thinks that Mark Grubert's shit doesn't stink and he knows more than everybody else in the world. I don't disagree with, like Alison McDowell, my last story that I wrote. I scraped a bunch of Alison McDowell. I scraped 15 stories because she came in and she started trolling me in my comments. You know, instead of, I'm a big fan of Alison McDowell's work. I'm a big fan of Mark Grubert's work. I'm not a big fan of Alison McDowell. I'm not a big fan of Mark Grubert. Like, their interpersonal skills have a lot to be desired. And I think a lot of it has to do with ego or low self-esteem or whatever it is. But, you know, I'm happy to talk to Mark Grubert whenever he wants. He has a lot more answers to questions than I do. I also have a lot of questions about how he knows the things that he knows, you know, because I'm doing it through research and working with and intuiting the information that I'm getting from known CIA and defense intelligence operators that I accidentally met while I was inventing myself as a journalist, because what I didn't really realize is that journalism is kindergarten for intelligence assets. And George will back me up on this. I mean, we meet people all the time. Your story about Jerome Corsi in the Harvard Club in New York is like, this is like intelligence 101 shit, you know? It's
The way
like,
you know is if they have 3 satellites and you don't. So that's how you know if somebody's intelligence or not. They have 3 satellites and you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how many satellites Mark Grubert has. You know, I don't, you know, he's a smart guy. I like him. I watch his stuff. He calls me names. Alison McDowell, smart woman. I watch her stuff. She calls me names, you know? And
A lot of these, Alison McDowell, let's just take her. Well, both of them, they wait forever to do the punchline. Spit it out, right? If you say that all the fires are for Agenda 2030, right? And you say it's all smart cities, and you say here's how they do it. They come up with smart LA. They don't call it the same thing. They're getting it all from the WEF charter. Spit it out and just say it in the first. Don't leave the audience hanging. Don't bury the lead.
right, and don't show me pictures of your petty point art projects, you know, in the middle of the story. You know, it's just, you know, it's unnecessary. Like,
I think that's where people.
I'm glad that you like your knitting. You know, give it
But
to
but I think this is.
She gives it away.
My point is that spit it out, save the fundamental theory, right, and then back it up and defend it, rather than Gruber did the same thing with something about the McCone memo. It was something about the JFK, and it was just like 45 minutes. That we're going to show it in 45 minutes. Spit it out, show it, and then start talking about it so everybody knows what you're talking about.
Right. So Alison McDowell was trolling me on my comments again, and she uses some cute name, so I didn't even really know it was her for a while. And the reason she writes all of, if you read these articles that are all referenced here, I'll show you if I scroll to the bottom here. I've referenced every link in this article goes to an Alison McDowell article. Okay, but what I've done is that I've broken it down so that people who speak English, okay, who aren't pedagogically on her level, can go figure out what the fuck she's saying, because half the time you don't know what the fuck she's saying. So here are her 16 articles. Every link in here links to an Alison McDowell article. But basically what I've done is that I used AI, I used ChatGPT to turn her research into English. That people, and there's you hear the train?
Yep. Yeah. Truth trains are coming, Rom. Truth trains are coming.
Okay. So, I used AI in order to be able to take the 16 articles that she referenced and turn it into something that anybody watching this video right now can go they can go learn in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. What's great about GPT, I mean, what's great about Substack, George, I don't know, for the real lazy people out there, okay, Substack has this thing. I don't know how to turn it on when I'm in this mode. Let me see. There's a way to turn on this mode where it actually it reads it to you. Is it read? Substack has got I don't like their interface. Hang on. Anyway, if you open this up in the Substack app, it will read you this article. There's Nicholas Bergruen with Jerry Brown and Evan, what's his name, the president of Snapchat, and his supermodel wife, because this is all about what I figured out about the modeling business. Again, this is something I was telling my wife yesterday. I was in the eugenics seed catalog business. That's what fashion is. Okay? This is where billionaires go to pick their breeding stock. Vogue magazine is what billionaires use to find. Why are there pictures of Nicholas Bergruen and Naomi Campbell? Why are there pictures of Nicholas Bergruen and Claudia Schiffer? I don't even think he has sex with these people. They're all in vitro. I think he's shopping. It's a seed. The elite model management book, the Jean-Luc Brunel Karen's modeling book. These are seed catalogs for billionaires looking for breeding stock. That's all. All the
Epstein's Island. Island.
That's all it's about.
Jean-Luc was, of course, the Parisian modeling agency guy that was working for Jeff Epstein.
Right. Who in 1983 had the worst reputation in Los Angeles of any human being on the planet. Okay.
And then he was in prison, right? Didn't he get convicted later on?
Well, they were holding him without bond, and he died when he was in prison. So my guess is that he died the same way Jeffrey Epstein died, and they're probably both in Bimini.
Well, there's probably a good chance of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, we've been going an hour. I'm going to see one more. I got one more starred thing here. Yeah, it was the Mark Grubert thing. It's like, yeah, I like Mark Grubert. Yeah, I like Allison McDowell. They're both assholes. And if they want to stop, and maybe I'm an asshole, but if they want to stop being assholes to me.
Just the Chinese water torture. Stop with the Chinese water torture.
Yeah.
Right? Don't play music, 20 minutes in. I don't like any podcast where it's 20 minutes of music and you saying hi to everyone, all this kind of like checking in with people. I just say spit it out, because if people come back to it and they only have 2 minutes, they just want the headline, and then they want to see if they want to keep reading or keep watching. And with Grubert and Allison McDowell, both need to learn that. It's called a funnel, reverse funnel. Spit out the headline. Don't bury the headline.
Well, we've talked about it before. There's research, there's reporting, there's editing, and there's publishing, right? They're different jobs, And okay, somebody said something about Ryan Dawson. I like Ryan Dawson. I'm friends with Ryan Dawson. I have a gripe with Ryan Dawson. He's this Southern pride guy, okay? And my jaded, one-sided Palmerston Zoo affected opinion is the Civil War was a proxy war against the United States by Great Britain. Okay, so I'm sorry if Jefferson Davis and Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee were duped into working for the British, but they were working for the British. So I don't really I don't have a lot of Southern pride. I don't buy that whole shtick. So
I went to Houston. I went to Houston. I know you've met him too. And I went to Houston and listened to his lecture and, the whole thing. And the only thing I want to say is, hey, how about these 9 core tail numbers with all the Jeff Epstein planes? The State Department, CIA owns those planes. I can't get anybody to cover. This is 8 years going on 8 years now. How about the DynCorp tail numbers? And just no one will ever mention that. No one.
And again, George, you're right. That's a killer piece of evidence. Okay. I have no doubt that Epstein was, I don't know, they used to call it a double agent or a triple agent or whatever it is. But I think that when you've got five eyes working, when you've got British intelligence running the CIA, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the New Zealand and the Australian intelligence services, it's all one thing. It's like, it's like the Gap, Banana Republic, and Old Navy. They're different franchises of the same business. It's all, at the end of the day, it's all owned by one company.
Peter, you've been to Newport, Irvine. A lot of clouds here. Look very dark and very brown. So I don't know what's the story, but it's clouded up here. It's not sunset yet. So anyway,
we're gonna go to San Diego. My wife didn't like the clouds in Newport. That's why we left. My wife didn't like the clouds in Oxnard. That's why we left. If you want to talk about the clouds, do you want to talk about the clouds?
No.
No? Okay. She didn't want
Let's
to talk
do
about
that next time. Let's do that next time.
Okay. Well,
okay.
It might not be a good thing for her to talk about. That's why she doesn't want to.
Let's just avoid that topic. How about
it's upsetting. It's upsetting her.
Sure, it is. It's bad memories. Yeah. So
anyway.
well, okay, Peter. Well, it was great. Sorry, I'm not in every cancer university with every vaccine simultaneously.
All right. Well, let us know if you need a ride to San Diego tomorrow, because we might be passing through. We might be so we have to arrange things in the car so that we can fit 3 people. But we can do it.
I could if you just take me to the train station too, I can meet you in San Diego too.
No, we can do it. We can do it. All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right. See you guys.
Bye now. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh, if you want to support this channel, if you want to support George Webb, go to georgewebb.substack.com. Become a member. If you wanted to support the Duke Report, you can either go to thedukereport.substack.com and become a member. Most of the content on the Duke Report is free now. I think the only thing that I'm charging for is my prompts, and that's because I think the stuff that I'm writing about is important enough that everyone needs to know it. So if you want me to keep doing this work, please subscribe. I'm not promising that you're going to get anything extra. I'm going to do Zoom calls. Okay. If you've got any other ideas about things that I could do while I'm running around trying to put my life back together, I'll take a look at it. But I want you to get this word out. I want as many people as possible to read Palmerston Zoo. I had several hundred copies of Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy go up in the fire. So the people who have signed copies right now, their value has gone up. But you can still buy. But you can still buy unsigned ones on Amazon.com. There's a link on the homepage of the Duke Report. I don't think it's the Jews who wrote the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. I definitely think that it was British intelligence, and they were doing a double cross on the Russian Secret Service when they published that. With that, I'm going to let it go, and I will see you maybe tomorrow, George.
I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
I know. Bye, everybody.